Hello there, this is National Master Kem Yang back at it with another video. This time, I'll be analyzing a game that came from my Simul. So, I was playing Mr. Noel J, right? So, the game started off with d4, d5, bishop f4, and knight c6. So, this is an interesting setup. The only thing I would say is that I have this knight c3, and you always, when you play knight c3 against a queen, knight c6, excuse me, against a queen's pawn, and you see a bishop f4, the last thing you want to see is a knight on b5. So knight f6 happens, and I played knight b5, e5, d takes, knight e4, and I played queen takes d5, right? Because after queen takes d5, knight takes, king d7, knight takes d5, bishop c5, e3, king e6, knight c7. So we know the game, it sort of ended pretty quick. So I want to suggest something. Here's the thing, d4, d5, bishop f4. The thing you should do with bishop f4 is it's a harmless move, right? At the start, you might think, okay, it's a harmless move. Here's a way to deal with it. I suggest black players play bishop f5, and after white plays knight c3 with the same idea, right? Play a6. Don't be afraid to play a6. Just prevent knight b5, right? Or you can choose knight f6, knight c3, and here you play a6. I think the most important thing is that, right, let's look on the white side, right? Think about it as if this happened, right? Right, let's look at this. This is what is called, after we say, let's say for example, d5, right? Takes, knight takes, this is what is called the fried liver attack. But let's think about it this way, knight g5, d5, right? You're pushing the d5 pawn, and now let's look at what happened in our game. Doesn't it look symmetrical? Does this remind you of something? Hopefully it does, except knight h5, right? Does this remind you of something? This reminds you of the opposite side of what you saw in the fried liver. d5, e5, d5, e5, right? So here, the pieces are attacking c7. Here, the pieces are attacking f7. Same principle, right? I mean, here, you could play h6, but then white has d4, right? So in this case, I wouldn't suggest h6 because white gets sort of a development sort of thing. But here, against the queen's pawn, feel free to play a6 because after you play bishop f5, e6, bring the bishop out, you're going to be fine, even though you played one a6 move. So this is basically my suggestion, right? Knight f6, knight c3, a6, e3, bishop f5, knight f3, e6, h3, bring your bishop out, don't be afraid. And then eventually, the pawn's going to capture this or the queen's going to capture this. Doesn't exactly matter. You bring the knight out later, you castle, and the main goal really is to push him and eventually push him. Or you can push him, but there are multiple ways to go about this approach. So, something I like to recommend for the d4, say e3 here, just follow this, bishop f5, right? If the knight comes here, well, now you could play e6, knight f3, bishop d6. Just continue placing the bishop here, challenge the bishop, trade it off if you want. If the knight comes here, feel free to castle. If the bishop comes here, still bring the knight out, alright? Don't be afraid of bringing the knight out, because you want to develop all your pieces in order to get a good game. And so my philosophy when it comes to openings is get your pieces out, no matter the cost. Just get your pieces out. Once you get your pieces out, no matter what kind of position it is, you'll always get a chance to bounce back. So that's sort of the message I send to people. If you notice, I rarely get to pull this sort of thing on players. And it's not easy because as you get to the higher levels, people understand that they will take any cost to get their pieces out. Right? So e5, knight e4, and now there's queen takes d5, right? So even here, I'd suggest a6. Weirdly enough, very weird. e3, and then knight f6, and everything returns back to normal, right? Bring the bishop out, still fine, perfectly here. So what I recommend is basically for any bishop f4, bishop f5 setups, right? The bishops come here, just line up the pieces. Bring your bishop out to d6, and as for this guy, he could come out to d7, could come out to c6, doesn't matter. And then we can worry about the middle game later, whether it is you want to push this guy, you want to push this guy, whether you want to push this guy, it sort of all depends on the kind of middle game you get. So I'm going to finish this video here. Hopefully you did learn something, and hopefully what I recommended to you, you can try it in your games, you can sort of think about it, ask me questions in the comments, whether there's anything you want to sort of comment on, whether there's something you can think about. So hopefully you enjoyed it.